And we couldn't travel this week. We had some feverish babies. So
Aw.
we are mama and daddy right now. But we wanted to be a part of HGTV Week, even if we couldn't come there.
Fans tuned in to Season 7 of HGTV's Hometown, expecting the familiar sight of Ben Napier leading renovations with his signature blend of craftsmanship and calm authority. But he was essentially rubbed out of the show. Social media lit up with theories. For a couple whose charm and authenticity had long defined small-town Laurel, Mississippi, this sudden void was more than a production hiccup. So, what really happened to Ben Napier from Hometown? Well, today, we'll answer this and much more. From workshop to national spotlight. In 2015, long before Ben and Erin Napier became household names, they were quietly transforming Laurel, Mississippi, one fixer-upper at a time. Ben, a skilled carpenter and craftsman, operated out of his small workshop downtown. Erin, a graphic designer with an eye for color and layout, documented these projects on social media, sharing before and after shots and small glimpses into their lives. Their posts were authentic, unpolished, and deeply engaging. It was this raw honesty and visible skill that caught the attention of HGTV producers looking for a fresh take on renovation shows. By January 2016, Hometown premiered, introducing viewers to a narrative that combined the nostalgia of historic homes with the emotional resonance of community revitalization. The show's format was deceptively simple. Identify a dilapidated property, collaborate with the homeowners to understand their vision, and execute a renovation that honored both history and contemporary living. But you see, within this simplicity lay the tension and drama that would define the series. Every project required balancing structural integrity, design aesthetics, and the emotional stakes of clients entrusting their most personal spaces to the Napier duo. Ben quickly emerged as the anchor of this transformation. His expertise in construction and carpentry became the backbone of the show. Whether he was repairing century-old beams, restoring original moldings, or repurposing salvaged materials, his work combined technical skill with an intuitive understanding of space. In Season 3, Episode 8, for instance, he meticulously restored a craftsman cottage, preserving the home's original architectural details while creating functional spaces for a young family. In another episode, Season 5, Episode 12, he transformed a historic bank building into a single-family residence, incorporating the vault door and other period elements into the modernized design. Viewers also connected with the Napier's ability to capture the soul of a home and translate it into tangible design choices. Each episode highlighted personal stories, young families moving into their first homes, retirees reclaiming a family property, or local businesses receiving a facelift that symbolized hope for the broader community. This focus on narrative, combined with Ben's craftsmanship and Erin's design acumen, distinguished Hometown from other renovation shows. Ratings reflected this resonance. In 2023, the series had reached its 8th season and was consistently ranked as one of HGTV's most popular real estate programs, with millions of streams per episode on platforms like Agent Wealth Hustle. The show's rapid success also enabled the Napiers to expand into brand building. Ben established Scotsman Company, a woodworking company that allowed him to channel his craft into specialized furniture and custom projects outside of the constraints of television. The company serves both as a business venture and as a platform to showcase his techniques, with pieces often reflecting historical styles blended with contemporary usability. Hometown also spawned spin-offs that further amplified the couple's influence. Hometown Takeover, launched in 2021, took their renovation philosophy beyond Laurel, targeting towns like Wetumpka, Alabama, and Sebring, Florida. In each community, the Napiers led teams to restore private homes, public buildings, parks, and local businesses, fostering a sense of pride and economic stimulation. These episodes demonstrated Ben's ability to scale his craftsmanship to larger, more complex projects, balancing aesthetic vision with structural precision and coordinating large teams without compromising quality. The national spotlight demanded careful navigation of personal and professional boundaries. While the Napiers' homes and workshops were often on display, their family life remained fiercely private. Their daughters, Helen, born in 2018, and May, born in 2021, are shielded from public scrutiny, a conscious choice reinforced by coordination with relatives of similarly aged children. This deliberate separation has allowed Ben to maintain focus on his craft and the show while safeguarding the normalcy of family life, a balance that few reality stars achieve. Ben's commitment to craft extended to mentoring and public engagement. In his Ben's Workshop series on Discovery Plus, launched in 2021, he guides viewers through hands-on woodworking projects, often with celebrity guests ranging from musicians to athletes. These episodes highlight process, precision, and problem-solving rather than spectacle, reinforcing his identity as a master craftsman. Concurrently, Aaron's book, Heirloom Rooms: Soulful Stories of Home, emphasizes the intersection of narrative, design, and history, complementing Ben's practical focus. Together, these endeavors expand the hometown brand into education and storytelling, creating a multi-platform presence that extends the couple's influence while retaining the authenticity that drew HGTV's attention in the first place. Their rise to national prominence is inseparable from Laurel itself. The Napiers have positioned themselves as both restorers and cultural ambassadors. The visibility provided by television has led to a tangible economic impact: increased tourism, business investment, community engagement. Then came Season 7. Behind the cameras, something had changed. The Vanishing Act. In the early months of 2023, when Hometown returned for its 7th season, the visuals were all familiar on the surface. The warm, sunlit streets of Laurel, Mississippi, the promise of transformation, the quiet storytelling that had defined the show since its debut in 2016. But beneath that familiarity, something had shifted. The camera, almost unconsciously, began to behave differently. It lingered longer on Aaron. It cut away sooner from job sites. And most noticeably, Ben, once the physical anchor of every renovation, was no longer consistently at the center of the action. In earlier seasons, his presence had been unmistakable. Ben wasn't just part of the process. He was the process. From demolition to framing, from custom woodwork to final installations, his hands were visible at nearly every stage. The show's visual language depended on it. Close-ups of sawdust, weight of reclaimed timber, the precision of measurements taken in real time. His physicality drove the pacing. When Ben moved, the project moved. When he explained a structural challenge, the audience understood the stakes. There was a continuity between effort and outcome. This made the transformations feel earned, almost tactile. That continuity began to fracture in Season 7. Instead of extended sequences of hands-on work, viewers saw shorter appearances, a brief consultation, a quick check-in, sometimes just a reveal. The labor itself, once central to the narrative, started happening off-screen. The edits became tighter, more selective, as if the show was quietly rebalancing itself without announcing it. And for a series built on the visible partnership between husband and wife, that shift didn't go unnoticed. The reaction was immediate. Fans pointed out that Ben seemed less visible, that scenes felt different. Then came speculation. Social media threads filled with theories, each one attempting to explain the absence that no one on screen was addressing directly. Some assumed a sudden illness. Others suggested creative disagreements with producers. A smaller but louder group wondered if he was stepping away from the show entirely. What amplified the concern wasn't just the reduction in screen time, it was the memory of what had come before. For nearly 7 seasons, Ben and Aaron Napier had built a dynamic that felt balanced and complete. Aaron's design vision relied on Ben's execution. He translated her ideas into structure, into something that could stand, function, and last. Their collaboration wasn't staged as separate roles, but as a continuous exchange. She imagined, he built, and together they revealed. Every episode depended on their interaction. Discussions at kitchen tables, decisions made mid-construction, and adjustments shaped by both perspectives. Ben's physical presence wasn't just about labor. It was about dialogue. Remove that, even partially, and the tone inevitably changes. Season 7, however, presented a different kind of storytelling. Erin's role expanded not just in design, but in narrative weight. The camera followed her more closely, allowing her voice to carry scenes that might previously have been shared. The homes still transformed, the emotional beats still landed, but the pathway to those moments felt less visibly collaborative. It was as if one half of a conversation had been softened, leaving the other to fill the space. And that's where the contrast became most striking. In earlier episodes, effort had a face. You could see the strain, the problem-solving, the incremental progress. In Season 7, much of that became implied rather than displayed. So what was going on? Well, in short, the fans were right. Ben Napier had indeed faded away. The breaking point. By early 2023, the unrelenting pace of renovations and physically intensive labor that had defined Ben Napier's career began to manifest in ways that fans of Hometown could not ignore. For years, Ben had been the engine behind every structural element of the show, lifting beams, restoring century-old doors, sanding and staining floors, and executing precise carpentry that required both strength and finesse. While viewers saw the polished end products, the cumulative strain on his body was largely invisible, hidden behind the charm of on-screen charisma and meticulous craft. The first signs of trouble emerged subtly. On-site crew members noticed Ben moving cautiously, occasionally favoring one shoulder during heavy lifts. Behind the cameras, Erin Napier observed a gradual decline in endurance. Tasks that once seemed effortless, such as hoisting timber, maneuvering tools, or holding awkward angles for prolonged periods, began taking a visible toll. Yet Ben, like many craftsmen, pushed forward, motivated by deadlines, client expectations, and a personal standard of excellence. It was only when discomfort escalated into persistent pain and functional limitation that the severity of his condition became undeniable. Medical evaluation revealed a torn rotator cuff, a common yet serious injury for anyone engaged in repeated overhead lifting and forceful arm movements. Rotator cuff tears involve the tendons and muscles that stabilize the shoulder joint, often leading to weakness, limited range of motion, and chronic pain if untreated. Ben's diagnosis required careful consideration, as improper handling could compromise not only his ability to work on Hometown, but also his long-term physical health. In consultation with orthopedic specialists, the decision was made to undergo surgical repair, a procedure involving reattachment of torn tendons and reinforcement of surrounding tissues. The surgery was scheduled for mid-2023.
I was just about to have surgery. I remember I was in a lot of pain because I was swimming at the hotel with Helen.
And it immediately altered the rhythm of production. For Ben, the most challenging aspect was not the surgery itself, but the aftermath. Post-operative protocols for rotator cuff repair are notoriously rigorous, often requiring 6 to 8 weeks of immobilization followed by months of gradual physical therapy. Lifting, pulling, and even minor forceful movements were strictly prohibited during the early stages. This presented an unprecedented challenge for someone whose professional identity had been intertwined with hands-on construction. For the first time in nearly a decade, Ben had to delegate responsibilities on set, relying on Erin and the production crew to manage tasks that he would normally oversee personally. Fans quickly noticed a shift in the 7th season's early episodes. On screen, Ben appeared less frequently during physically demanding sequences, sometimes offering guidance from the sidelines rather than actively manipulating materials. Social media reactions were immediate and varied. Speculation about behind-the-scenes conflict, rumors of a show exit, and concern for his health proliferated across platforms like Twitter and Instagram. Headlines questioned whether the Napiers could sustain their renovation pace, with fans tracking every frame for signs of his recovery progress. The contrast between the show's usual energetic rhythm and this sudden visible limitation created a sense of unease that underscored how integral Ben's physicality had become to the series' identity. During this period, Erin Napier assumed a more prominent on-site role, blending her design sensibility with emerging management responsibilities. She coordinated teams, oversaw installation of fixtures, and occasionally stepped in for light physical tasks. Meanwhile, Ben directed operations from a supervisory perspective, providing step-by-step instructions, reviewing measurements, and ensuring that structural integrity remained uncompromised. Ben adhered to a structured rehabilitation regimen, attending physical therapy sessions multiple times per week. These included progressive resistance exercises, range of motion routines, and eventually light load-bearing practice. His commitment to precision and patience translated into strict compliance with medical protocols. Even minor deviations could jeopardize tendon healing, so every activity was calculated and monitored. Production schedules were adjusted to accommodate both the physical limitations and the timeline of medical recovery. Episodes were strategically planned so that more design-centric scenes could feature Erin and client interactions, while heavy structural work was deferred until Ben's rehabilitation milestones were reached. This approach allowed the show to maintain continuity and quality, but also subtly documented a real-life struggle that few renovation shows acknowledge: the physical toll of sustained, intensive labor. The impact on the audience was multifaceted. While initial reactions leaned toward concern, many fans expressed admiration for Ben's transparency and perseverance. Interviews in late 2023 and early 2024, including appearances on shows like The Jennifer Hudson Show, allowed Ben and Erin to address the situation candidly.
Is Ben's surgery. He had 3 different surgeries in one on his left
On my shoulder.
Ben described the injury, the surgery, and the recovery process in detail, emphasizing the importance of health over immediate production goals. This openness strengthened viewer connection, presenting the Napiers not just as expert renovators, but as individuals confronting real challenges. From a production standpoint, the incident prompted reconsideration of workflow and risk management. Crew members began implementing additional safety protocols. Ben explored modifications to tools and techniques to reduce strain. The experience informed the long-term strategy for the show. It also highlighted the often overlooked dimension of reality TV, the toll exacted on those who perform the labor behind the polished final product. What his craft means for Ben Napier. Born into a family in Laurel, Mississippi, Ben was raised under the guidance of his father, Wayne Napier, a preacher whose influence extended beyond sermons and Sunday services. Discipline, routine, and a sense of purpose were woven into Ben's upbringing, forming the foundation of his personal and professional ethos. His early years were steeped in the rhythms of faith, daily readings, community service, and the responsibilities that come with life in a religious household. For Ben, this environment fostered a capacity for patience, perseverance, and precision. In his teenage years, Ben followed a natural path toward ministry. He served as a youth minister at Laurel First United Methodist Church, a role he maintained until 2014, immersing himself in mentoring, event planning, and spiritual guidance. This period reinforced his commitment to service and structure, instilling skills in leadership, communication, and community engagement. Every sermon, youth retreat, or counseling session required attention to detail and a careful consideration of human needs, traits that would unexpectedly translate to a career in restoring historic homes. Yet even as he engaged with the church, a different passion began to surface, quietly shaping the trajectory of his life. Woodworking entered Ben's life as both a pastime and a form of self-expression. His father had introduced him to tools and basic carpentry at a young age, gifting him the first set of chisels, hammers, and planes that would become extensions of his own hands. Ben recalled in a 2023 interview that his father was the first person to show him not only how to build something, but how to think about structure, form, and functionality. Over time, what began as a hobbyist interest evolved into a great skill. He learned to read the grain of wood, understand load-bearing structures, and anticipate how materials would age. These abilities became central to his identity. Ben's trajectory toward craftsmanship was intertwined with formal education, when he enrolled at the University of Mississippi. There, he pursued history, a choice that reflected a curiosity about context, narrative, and the stories embedded in physical spaces. His studies provided a lens through which he would later approach renovation projects, allowing him to see homes not simply as structures, but as vessels of human experience. This academic foundation informed his approach to Hometown, where each project begins with careful research, original blueprints, construction techniques of the early 20th century, and an understanding of architectural styles common in Laurel. The historical perspective allows Ben to blend modern functionality with preservation, ensuring that the homes he restores retain their original character while meeting contemporary standards. This fusion of faith, craft, and education became visible as he transitioned fully into woodworking and renovation. Ben's early exposure to discipline from his father created the precision required for structural integrity, while his historical knowledge informed design decisions that honored a home's origin. Every beam installed, every joint carved, reflects a consciousness of tradition and storytelling. It is this combination that drew HGTV's attention in 2015 when Ben and Erin documented their fixer-upper renovations on social media. Even as his career shifted away from ministry, Ben maintained elements of his faith in his work ethic. The commitment to service and care for others, first nurtured in church, translated into the projects themselves. On Hometown, each client receives more than a restored property. What his craft means, they gain a home that reflects their personal narrative. Ben approaches each project as a custodian rather than merely a contractor, emphasizing ethical responsibility in construction practices and respect for the original architect's intentions. The principles of stewardship echo the moral grounding imparted by his father, reinforcing that his identity as a craftsman is inseparable from his formative experiences. The shift from ministry to full-time craftsmanship was gradual but deliberate. Ben's skills in carpentry allowed him to carve a niche in historic preservation, tackling homes that required both technical knowledge and a sense of aesthetic fidelity. From the delicate restoration of century-old doors to the careful replication of molding and staircases, his work demanded a level of concentration and patience honed during his time in youth ministry. The iterative process of sanding, staining, and assembling became almost meditative, mirroring the discipline of daily devotionals and reinforcing the spiritual dimension of labor, attention, intention, and care. Personal milestones continued to shape Ben's identity alongside his craft. In 2018, the couple welcomed their first daughter, Helen, followed by May in 2021. The responsibility of parenthood added a new dimension to his sense of purpose. Balancing family with the physically demanding work of renovation required discipline and careful prioritization, echoing the structured upbringing instilled by his father. Ben's approach to woodworking evolved to integrate both safety and longevity, ensuring that the physical demands of his projects did not compromise his health or his ability to provide for his family. Even as Hometown continues to expand into new towns and spin-offs, the core of Ben Napier's identity remains rooted in these early influences. The blend of faith, craft, and historical knowledge informs every decision, whether restoring a 1920s bungalow, mentoring a design team, or balancing the demands of family and fame. But fame also comes with pressures and controversies, rumors, criticism, and silence. Let's step back to 2020, when a very different kind of attention briefly surrounded Ben and Erin Napier. That year, during the nationwide protests following the murder of George Floyd, public figures across the United States were being scrutinized not just for what they said, but for what they didn't. In that climate, a video circulated online showing the Napiers at a local event in Laurel, Mississippi. The clip itself was not inflammatory, nor did it contain any explicit statement or action that could be clearly framed as controversial. But timing mattered, context mattered, and in a moment when silence was often interpreted as a position, even neutral footage became a starting point for questions. Criticism followed. For years, The couple's image had been remarkably consistent, grounded, apolitical on the surface, focused on community, craftsmanship, and storytelling. The 2020 moment disrupted that clarity, and their response, or more precisely, the timing of it, became part of the narrative. The Napiers did not immediately issue a detailed public statement when the video began circulating. That delay was interpreted in different ways. Some saw it as avoidance, others as caution. But when Erin Napier did speak, her message was measured. She addressed the broader issue of racial justice, acknowledged the importance of listening and learning, and emphasized that meaningful engagement doesn't always happen in performative, public-facing ways. Their official position, as it emerged through interviews and social media, aligned with that tone. Supportive of equality, opposed to racism, but resistant to reducing complex issues into short, declarative statements made under pressure. They framed their approach as one rooted in community-level action, rather than public signaling. For some audiences, that explanation was sufficient. It reinforced the idea that their brand of authenticity included restraint. However, for others, it left questions unresolved. In an era where many public figures were making explicit, immediate declarations, the Napiers' slower, more measured response felt out of sync with expectations. That tension between authenticity and expectation didn't disappear. At the same time, there's a consistent principle underlying both moments: control over what is shared and when. The Napiers have been unusually deliberate in how they manage visibility, especially when it comes to their family. Their daughters, Helen, born in January 2018, and May, born in May 2021, exist at the edge of their public life, present but protected. They appear occasionally, but without the kind of exposure that turns children into extensions of a brand. The couple has spoken about coordinating with extended family members to limit what is posted online, creating a unified boundary around their children's visibility. The intention is long-term, to allow them to grow up without the constant documentation and commentary that comes with public attention. In some interviews, Erin has even suggested a guiding principle: delaying meaningful social media presence for their children until much later in life, potentially as far as adulthood. What makes this approach notable is its consistency. It hasn't shifted in response to audience demand or increased fame. Even as Hometown expanded into spin-offs and drew larger viewership numbers, the boundaries around their children remained intact. No major exceptions, no gradual loosening, just a steady, enforced separation between the public-facing brand and private family life. And that consistency extends beyond parenting. It shapes how they handle health, workload, and even professional transitions. Not every detail is disclosed immediately. Not every change is explained in real time. Information is released selectively, often after the fact, once it can be framed clearly, rather than speculated on in fragments. But here's where the contradiction sharpens. Hometown thrives on intimacy. The show's appeal is built on the idea that viewers are being invited into something real. Real homes, real stories, and real lives. That sense of access creates an expectation. If we're allowed to see this much, shouldn't we see everything? The Napiers' answer, consistently, has been no. They offer authenticity, but not total transparency. They share emotion, but not every detail. They invite viewers into their work, but not fully into their private lives. Speaking of consistency, return and reinvention. After months of strict immobilization and physical therapy following his rotator cuff surgery, Ben Napier started re-entering the spaces that had defined his career. Initially, his involvement was measured, supervising small-scale woodworking projects in his Scotsman Co. workshop, reviewing construction plans, and giving detailed instructions on structural elements, rather than lifting, sanding, or hauling materials himself. For fans who had noticed his absence in early Season 7, these glimpses marked the first evidence of his return, and the reactions were immediate. Social media buzzed with posts noting the subtle re-emergence of the heart of hometown, with fans expressing relief that the hiatus was temporary. Ben's physical limitations prompted a strategic adjustment in production. Tasks that had previously required his direct labor were delegated to trusted crew members, while Erin Napier assumed an even more prominent leadership role on site. She not only oversaw aesthetic and design decisions, but also coordinated the flow of construction, liaising with contractors and ensuring that timelines remained intact. This shift highlighted the couple's adaptability. Behind the scenes, production notes indicated that these adjustments were carefully timed with Ben's recovery milestones, allowing him to gradually regain physical strength without jeopardizing ongoing projects. The rehabilitation period also influenced the way Ben approached carpentry and structural work. Post-surgery, he experimented with ergonomic tools, lighter materials, and modular construction techniques that reduced repetitive strain while maintaining high craftsmanship standards. Pieces created in this period, including custom cabinets, window casings, and intricately restored doors, reflected both his signature attention to detail and a newfound efficiency born of necessity. This evolution of method was subtle but visible to attentive viewers. The same dedication and precision remained, but the approach had adapted to his changing physical capacity. Meanwhile, Hometown's narrative framework evolved in tandem. Season 7 incorporated storytelling that subtly acknowledged these changes without overtly focusing on Ben's health. Viewers observed more emphasis on Erin's design interventions, client interactions, and neighborhood-level storytelling. Ben, meanwhile, contributed strategic input and specialty carpentry. The Napier's expansion beyond Laurel also accelerated during this period. Hometown Takeover, which premiered its first season in 2021, had already positioned them as renovation influencers capable of addressing entire towns rather than single homes. By late 2023, production for the second and third seasons was well underway, targeting towns like Sebring, Florida, for large-scale revitalization projects. Ben's role in these endeavors followed the adjusted model. He guided carpentry and restoration crews, reviewed design specifications, and focused on critical elements requiring specialized skills. Erin, in parallel, oversaw aesthetic coherence and community engagement, conducting client interviews and highlighting local businesses. Meanwhile, in late 2023, Ben publicly discussed his commitment to fitness and weight management, citing concerns over rising blood pressure and overall health. Interviews and social media updates revealed that he and Erin had adjusted their diet. They now emphasize whole foods, balanced nutrition, and sustainable eating habits to support both recovery and long-term wellness. On the production side, the enforced evolution led to creative experimentation. Crew members adopted new filming techniques that focused on the collaborative dynamic rather than individual heroics. The show incorporated more B-roll of Erin's design process, client reactions, and neighborhood impact, while Ben's contributions were showcased through high-skill carpentry segments and detailed problem-solving. This approach added a layer of sophistication to the series, emphasizing the integrated nature of design, construction, and community revitalization. Episodes balanced narrative storytelling with practical insight, illustrating how challenges like physical injury could be navigated without compromising aesthetic or structural quality. The audience response was largely positive. Viewership data from 2023 to 2024 indicated that Season 7 maintained strong ratings despite the shift in on-screen roles. Fans engaged with posts about Ben's recovery journey, Erin's leadership, and the expanded town-wide projects. For the Napiers, the hiatus was never a disappearance. It was a forced, necessary evolution under pressure. Ultimately, it strengthened the foundation of their lives, brand, and public legacy. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, Don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.